The early days of May 2025 witnessed a sharp escalation in tensions between India and Pakistan. This was not an unfamiliar situation for the two nuclear-armed neighbors. Decades of mistrust and unresolved disputes have often led to volatile standoffs. However, this particular period felt different. The rhetoric from both sides was increasingly heated. Cross-border skirmishes along the line of control became more frequent and intense. Diplomatic channels seemed strained almost to a breaking point. The air was thick with apprehension as citizens in both nations watched the developments with growing concern, fearing a larger conflict. Several underlying factors contributed to this precarious situation. Intelligence reports suggested potential militant infiltrations. Political posturing in the lead-up to regional developments also played a significant role. The media landscape, particularly in India, began to reflect this heightened state of alert. News channels started dedicating extensive airtime to border developments. Panel discussions often featured aggressive rhetoric, with retired military officials and hawkish commentators dominating the narrative. This created an environment where sober analysis was often drowned out by jingoistic fervor. The international community watched with unease. Calls for restraint came from various global capitals. However, the domestic compulsions and the historical baggage of the India-Pakistan relationship made de-escalation a challenging task. In mid-May 2025, the Indian government announced Operation Sindoor. It was described as targeted strikes against militant launch pads across the line of control. The government claimed it was to neutralize imminent threats. The operation captured the public's imagination and dominated headlines. Indian news channels went into overdrive, often reporting unverified details. Pakistani authorities denied the extent of Indian claims, creating contrasting narratives. One of the most egregious pieces of misinformation that emerged during this period was the claim of Indian forces attacking targets near Karachi. Several prominent Indian television news channels began reporting this sensational development. They alleged that Indian naval assets or long-range air power had struck significant installations in or around Pakistan's largest city and port. These reports were often accompanied by dramatic visuals, sometimes old or unrelated footage, presented as evidence of the ongoing operation. Anchors spoke with grave certainty about this supposed major escalation, painting a picture of a much wider conflict. The claims about attacking Karachi were particularly alarming due to the city's strategic importance and dense population. Such an attack would have represented a massive escalation, far beyond the scope of the officially described Operation Sindoor. Yet, these news channels persisted with the narrative for several hours, some even throughout the day. They cited unnamed sources and intelligence inputs. The reports generated significant panic and jingoistic fervor on social media. Hashtags related to the Karachi attack trended widely, with many citizens believing that India had dealt a severe blow to Pakistan. Another prominent strand of misinformation involved exaggerated claims about downing Pakistani fighter jets. Following reports of aerial engagements, several Indian news outlets began asserting that the Indian Air Force had shot down multiple Pakistani aircraft. The numbers varied, with some channels claiming 2, 3, or even more enemy jets destroyed. These claims were often presented as confirmed facts, attributed to top sources in the defense establishment. Animated sequences showed Indian Air Force jets triumphing in dogfights, further cementing these claims in the public mind. These reports of downed Pakistani jets were widely celebrated. Social media erupted with congratulatory messages for the Indian Air Force. News anchors lauded the supposed bravery and skill of Indian pilots. The narrative was one of clear aerial supremacy. However, much like the Karachi attack myth, concrete, verifiable evidence for these multiple downings remained elusive. While aerial engagements did occur, the specific numbers and outcomes reported by many Indian media outlets were not officially corroborated by the Indian Air Force in such detail. Section 5. The Unseen Hand: Why Misinformation Flourished. Several interconnected factors contributed to the rampant spread of misinformation by Indian media during the May 2025 conflict. One of the primary drivers was the intense competition for television rating points, or TRPs. In India's crowded media market, news channels are under constant pressure to attract viewers. During times of national crisis, especially conflicts with Pakistan, viewership tends to surge. Outlets often resort to sensationalism, jingoism, and exclusive breaking news, even if unverified, to capture and retain audience attention. The pursuit of higher TRPs can unfortunately incentivize irresponsible journalism. Jingoism and hyper-nationalism also played a crucial role. A significant section of the Indian media has, over the years, adopted a highly nationalistic tone, particularly concerning Pakistan. During conflicts, this often translates into unquestioning support for the government and military narratives, and a reluctance to report anything that could be perceived as undermining national morale or strength. Critical analysis is often labeled as unpatriotic. This environment makes it easy for misinformation that aligns with a triumphant national narrative to spread rapidly, while dissenting or cautious voices are marginalized. The nature of information flow during military operations is another contributing factor. Section 6. Guardians of Truth Fact-Checkers amidst the noise. Amidst the deluge of misinformation, independent fact-checking organizations in India played a crucial, albeit challenging role. Groups like Alt News, Boom Live, and others worked tirelessly to debunk false claims and verify information circulating in the media and on social media. These organizations employed meticulous research methods. They cross-referenced official statements, analyzed satellite imagery, reverse-searched images and videos, and consulted experts to ascertain the truth behind viral claims. Their work provided a vital counter-narrative to the often sensationalized and unverified reports from some mainstream outlets. Fact-checkers tackled numerous specific instances of misinformation. For example, they debunked old or unrelated videos being passed off as current footage from Operation Sindoor. They investigated claims about the alleged Karachi attack, showing the lack of credible evidence. They also scrutinized the varying numbers of downed Pakistani jets, highlighting discrepancies and the absence of verifiable proof for some of the more exaggerated figures. Section 7. Echoes of Deception, Real-World Impact of False Narratives. The proliferation of misinformation during the India-Pakistan conflict of May 2025 had significant and tangible real-world consequences. Firstly, it dangerously inflamed public opinion. When citizens are fed a constant diet of exaggerated claims of victory and unverified reports of enemy aggression, it can lead to increased hostility and a reduced appetite for peaceful resolutions. This jingoistic fervor can put pressure on governments to adopt more hawkish stances, making de-escalation efforts more challenging. The false narratives created an environment where rational discourse was difficult. Secondly, misinformation eroded trust, not only between the two nations but also between the Indian public and its own media. When news outlets are caught repeatedly broadcasting false or misleading information, their credibility suffers. While some segments of the audience might prefer partisan reporting, many others become disillusioned and skeptical of all news sources. This can lead to a more cynical and misinformed citizenry, which is detrimental to a healthy democracy. The failure to correct errors prominently further compounded this erosion of trust. Section 8. A Citizen's Shield, Identifying Fake News in Crisis. In times of crisis such as the May 2025 conflict, it is crucial for citizens to develop skills to identify fake news and misinformation. One of the first steps is to be skeptical of sensational headlines and emotionally charged language. Misinformation often relies on provoking strong emotional responses, fear, anger, or excessive pride, to bypass critical thinking. If a news report seems too dramatic or perfectly aligns with a particular bias, it warrants closer scrutiny. Always question the source of the information before sharing it. Another important tip is to check multiple reputable sources. Do not rely on a single news outlet, especially if it has a known bias or a history of sensationalism. Look for corroboration from established national and international news organizations, official government channels, while still maintaining a degree of skepticism, and independent fact-checking websites. If a major event is being reported by only one or two lesser-known sources or primarily through unverified social media posts, it is a red flag. Be wary of exclusive reports that no one else is carrying. Pay close attention to the evidence presented. Section 9. Rebuilding Trust, the Imperative for Media Accountability. The events of May 2025 served as a stark reminder of the critical need for greater media accountability and responsible journalism in India. The ease with which misinformation spread, amplified by mainstream outlets, highlights systemic issues within the media landscape. Rebuilding public trust requires a concerted effort from media organizations themselves, regulatory bodies, and the audience. It is not enough to simply move on from false reports. There must be a commitment to accuracy and ethical reporting, especially during times of national crisis. Media houses must prioritize journalistic ethics over the race for TRPs or the temptation of jingoistic fervor. This includes robust internal fact-checking mechanisms, clear guidelines for reporting on sensitive issues like military conflicts, and a willingness to issue prominent corrections and apologies when errors are made. Training journalists in verification techniques and ethical decision-making is crucial. Furthermore, there should be a greater emphasis on nuanced reporting that avoids sensationalism and provides context rather than simply amplifying official narratives or unverified claims from anonymous sources.